Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Jasper Cole. Jasper, how you doing today, man?
Hey, buddy. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man, this is such an honor for me. I want to say before we actually get started here, some things you guys may know. Jasper as Zach Plachette from MacGruber, but he does have over 100 film and TV titles that I could talk about. But I'm not going to do that because I want to learn more about him. We could talk about, he's been in The Forgotten, haunting viewers as the uncontrollable, abusive father in Michael Eisner's Prom Night, American Horror Story, The Purge Anarchy. Man, you are a jack of 1,000 trades. We've seen you all over the place in film and cinema. So how did you get started in film and television?
Well, I came to LA. Now remember, I'm old. So I came to LA with a play that I co-wrote and co-starred in 1987. And we got it made here and it ran for a couple of years. And that just sort of got us up, got me in town. I got an agent, the manager, and then reality hit, and I had to start pounding the pavement. So I just started getting TV and film roles, and I did a lot of theater. I did theater for like 20 years. I still do theater. I would love to do more, but the first 15 years of my career, I was sort of playing, the sidekick, the best friend, because I wasn't really leading guy, Hollywood leading guy, and I wasn't exactly character enough. And then when I turned 40, I got really scary looking. When I turned 40, I'd lost the baby fat. I don't know what the hell happened. I woke up, I was like, who is that? But the Michael Eisner, the Prom Queen series was my first bad guy role. And so it got good response, and then I thought, so I kind of leaned into it. I grew my hair out, I grew the beard, and I had to sort of rebrand myself to the industry. And so the last 20 years, thank God, I've been able to be on this amazing list with these wonderful other bad guy character actors.
And what I love about something you just said, and I love the fact that, and it always happens this way, I meet the guys that are just like the biggest douchebags you could possibly imagine on the screen. But when you talk to them, they're the nicest, kindest guys in the world. So like, it's amazing to me. And it shows really the maturity and the length that you go as an actor to be able to portray such a terrible, shitty person, when in reality, you're such a great, nice, kind guy. Like the little bit I've known you, you've been nothing but super respectful, super polite, super kind. And that doesn't go unnoticed, because there's a lot of people in the business that haven't been in it for a quarter as long as you, that treat people like complete dog shit. So for you to play the characters that you play, but to be the type of person you have been towards me so far already, it really shows, like I said, the depth of the character actor that you can be. So do you attribute that at all? Because I always often compare being a theater actor and being a film actor to being a musician. When you're a musician and you're making a record, it takes that time for it to be produced and for it to be put out. So you don't get the instant gratification, much like being a film actor. But when you're playing live shows, much like playing theater, you're getting to see the live reaction. You're getting that instant gratification right away. So do you prefer, I know it's like, do you like your son or your daughter more, but do you prefer being on the stage, or do you prefer being behind the camera?
It's a great question. Thank you, by the way, for the compliments. Coming from the theater, for me, it's the only time as an actor that we really get to sort of sustain a whole performance. I mean, it's kind of us from the moment the curtain goes up. TV and film is, you're doing your bits, and it's all about the editor basically. And so I love theater because of that. As an actor, it's sort of the actor's medium, as close as you can get to that. I mean, but it's interesting because I used to just assume everybody came from the theater, and it would be a natural progression to do TV and film. And then I started meeting these amazing film and TV actors who had never done theater, but then I got to see what a real technique they had, and they're really two different beasts. So I have enormous respect for both, so we make more money doing TV and film, but but what's happened with me is I'm so thankful, I'm so busy that I haven't been able to commit to a play, but I'm dying. It's funny because January of 2020, I renewed my equity card because I thought this is the year. I'm gonna go to New York and I'm gonna do theater. And then, 2 months
Something
later,
happened that year. I can't remember, but something
let's
crazy.
see, what could that have been?
Maybe didn't wasn't very good for stage actors at that point.
Yeah, wasn't very good for any actor
Yeah.
for a while, but
Right.
yeah. So I'm still, I keep putting the word out there. I'm looking to do a really good play.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see you go back to the stage, man. And hopefully at some point you can make it over to the Mitten here in Michigan and I can go check you out in person, man. I think it'd be great to check you
You're
out.
in Michigan. Okay, yeah.
I
What a
am.
great state. Yeah.
Oh, it's the only state that you go to and you want to shake its hand. So and I do want to say real quick, we talk about how you could play one of the dirtiest people on the screen, but we also talked about how in real life you're one of the kindest guys in the world, and you guys can figure that out for yourselves by following him on all his social media links, which I have down here in the description. So make sure you're clicking these links. Make sure you're giving Jasper a follow, not only so you can see the type of man that he is, but you can stay up to date on all the projects that he has coming up. So when he does make that return to the stage, maybe you can be there in person to check it out as well. So Jasper, we know what you got going on in the future, and we know what you're doing right now. But here for a little bit, my friend, I would like to go back to the past. And before we get started on this is episode number 328 of My First Horror Movie, guys. But this is episode number 1 that I've ever talked about this movie. So I am beyond excited to talk about this movie for the very first time on this podcast. So
well, congratulations on all the episodes.
Oh, thank you, man. That means a lot. This is my baby. This, besides my children and my wife, this is the most important thing in the world to me. I take it very serious. And the fact that I'm gonna get to talk about a classic for the first time with someone that I really idolize and look up to means a lot to me. So let's talk about the movie that got you started off in horror, Jasper. Your first horror movie. And Jasper, the first horror movie that you watched was?
The original, the very first Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. I believe it was 1977. I was 12 years old.
What an amazing start to your horror life. I mean, this is like, hey, we're gonna go get in the kiddie pool, and you saying, no, I'm gonna jump off the Titanic. I'm just gonna go right in the deep end right now and just go all out. So do you remember who you watched it with, who was with you the very first time you had seen it?
Well, it's significant for a lot of reasons, but this was the first time my parents allowed me and my group of buddies to actually go to the theater by yourself. I mean, can you even imagine now that as a parent, you would drop your 12-year-olds off at the theater and leave them for like 6 hours? Because, we would sneak into other theaters. But this was the first time that we really were allowed to do that. And I really didn't know about horror films. I didn't really know much about. I mean, I guess I knew of like the old Frankenstein and some of the stuff as a kid, but this was the real first modern film.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Now, the irony, I guess there are no accidents in life, because one of my dearest, closest girlfriends is Susan Lanier, who played Brenda.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go full circle to 25 years ago, I meet Susan Lanier, and she's like family to me. So I did let her know that I was coming on here tonight. She says hello to everybody, but she wanted me to remind everyone it's the 45th anniversary of The Hills Have Eyes as well. So that's just a little side note, but I mean, that's what's crazy about this business. I'm 12, never thought I'd ever be in show business at that stage in my life. And then, what happened? After watching this film, I became a horror fanatic. It was all of them. I mean, the most obscure to the most blockbuster. But anyway, so yeah, this was riveting. I mean, there's so many scenes in this, but Suze knows. I mean, I've told her that I guess the rape scene, the scene where she's known for her screams, in this film, but that was so like traumatizing a little bit for us. I mean, we were, I think there were 5 buddies, 5 guys.
Right.
we weren't quite, we weren't 13 yet. We weren't quite douchebag. We weren't, the hormones were not like taking us over. We were just kind of like, damn. But
well, because it's bad enough when you see a rape scene in general.
Yeah.
But to see a rape scene like this, you know what I mean? Like, there's never a rape scene where you're like, oh, this is okay. They're all bad.
Right.
But this takes it up a notch,
And this was 77. I mean, this was groundbreaking, I imagine, at the time. It was a lot of probably a lot. There was all kinds of. There's no such thing as bad press, I guess, but
Right.
I was gonna say, God, there were a lot of eyes on the movie. There's so many things and cliches I should not do, but
there's a lot of eyes.
I know
they were on the grass. They were in the hills. There was eyes everywhere.
But people may not know, or I'm sure all of your listeners are horror fanatics. But it was also Dee Wallace's. I don't know if it was her introduction. I don't know if it was her first film, but it certainly was one of her first or second.
One of the early ones.
Yeah, who went on to do E.T. and all the amazing stuff. And then, of course, Michael Berryman, who forever, there's only one Michael Berryman, and the actor who played Sue's brother, who I'm blanking on his name, the blonde-haired guy, they all remained pretty close. The cast remained very close. Susan, there would be a great one to have on your show, obviously, but she's told me so much great stuff about that movie. And then when I told her that was one of my first films, she was like blown away, but yet she gets approached all the time with some of those same comments. Like, that was kind of the first introduction in a theater that a lot of people had to horror.
And I love something else that you said about talking about how at 12 years old, you're watching this film not knowing that you're going to become friends with Sue. And it's always awesome when you get to meet, because I'm blessed, man. Like, I'm 36 years old. I grew up in a video store. My parents owned a mom and pop video store. And so my job, I'm sorry for repeat viewers that have heard this before, my job throughout the week as a young boy was whenever people would return a video, I'd put it in our VCR rewinder. And I would rewind it and I'd go put it back on the shelf. And if I did that every day, at the end of the week, I got to take home a Nintendo cartridge and a horror movie.
Wow.
And so, like, my whole childhood was just, Nintendo and horror movies. And, now I get to hang out with people like you, people that I've watched. And, you always have that little bit of anxiety. Like, I always have before an episode starts, still to this day, 300 episodes in, like I had this anxiety of, oh, this person isn't going to live up to the expectations that I've built for them. But, you never meet your heroes, but I've been so blessed in the horror community that I've never really had a person that I've met on here that wasn't just so genuine and so kind and so open. So it's nice to hear that even, someone that I've idolized and look up to has that with the, you have friends that you grew up looking up to, and then you meet them and become good friends. Like, it's such a cool story to hear, man.
Well, I don't know about you. I find in my whole career, honestly, I could probably count on one hand really horrible run-ins with co-stars or people, you don't forget them, because they're so memorable. But in general, I think I've had really great experiences with the most people. Now, there's some lesser known people that can be difficult, but the ones who've really they're at the top of their game. I've always had no problems with. But no, Sue's Lanier, so Sue's also hilarious. She went on to do so many sitcoms or whatever. She makes me laugh harder than, she has the best comedic timing. But it's interesting because I came into the business from comedy, stand up, and thinking I was going to be a sitcom star my whole career. And then I ended up playing all these bad guys. Sue's kind of jumped out the screen in The Hills Have Eyes, and and then sort of went into the sitcom world and lots of other stuff. So I tell actors all the time, you just don't know where this business is going to take you, but just keep showing up, keep saying yes, treat every job as if it's a $1 million paying job, because it's a small world, small business.
Right. And something else that you just said that I want to go back to real quick. You talked about, horror and comedy. And I think that the reason that horror and comedy always often go hand in hand with each other is because they're both so based on timing. You got to have the right timing if you're doing comedy to make that joke land. If you're doing horror, you got to have that right timing to get the person jump out of their seat. So when you have these things that are so closely knit with timing, I think it may be a natural thing to be able to move in between the two of them. If you can have good comedic timing, you can probably look at Jordan Peele. I mean, he's got great comedic timing, and his horror movies are top notch because of that timing. I think that's a big part of why a comedian can transition into horror and vice versa well if they have the good timing to go along with it.
Yeah, I believe that comedy is much harder than drama. So I think most comedy actors do really well in drama. Most dramatic actors aren't always, it doesn't always go the other way.
Right.
For I find that for myself as well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but also there's a lot of camp and comedy in some of the horror films. You know what I mean? It just depends on what genre within the horror film. But I do love a good campy, funny horror film also,
My first horror movie, still my favorite horror movie to this day, is House from 1986. And I totally think that horror, like, it's got a lot of real good, funny moments in it. So I totally get where you're coming from. I love me a good Shaun of the Dead. I think that's a brilliant movie. A lot of people look at that as a spoof. I think it's a brilliant horror movie. So
well, even in the Scream movies, there's comedy. There's some real funny bits in Scream as well, which well, it's interesting because I've always been more the horror films I really like or things that maybe could really happen. Like I'm not so big into the monster stuff as a viewer, but like my second favorite film is When a Stranger Calls, the original one with Carol Kane. Because see, to me, what was so scary about that is that could really happen, right? That's a real life thing, that the babysitter's there and the guy's upstairs. That movie stuck with me big time.
Have you checked the children?
Oh, yes. And we've traced the call and it's coming from inside the house.
We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house. Our squad cars are on the way over there right now.
I mean, and then the moment when they're trying to run to, she's running to the front door and the perpetrator's coming down, and just that timing of who's going to get to the door first. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
suspense at its best right there. And one of the most underrated final girls of all time.
Yes, you're right. It's funny because I'm older now. When I talk about a certain movie, like If the Hills Have Eyes, that's why I said the original, or like When a Stranger Calls, because I keep forgetting they've all been remade at least once or twice, right? Depending on what age who I'm talking to, I won't have a clue sometimes on the remakes, but I'll know the original.
Well, I mean, that's where they're making their money at now, the nostalgic value, which isn't always a bad thing, but with The Hills Have Eyes, like we said, obviously, I like to put a lot of clips over top, guys. And please don't ask me why I didn't put the rape clip over top. I will not do it. It won't happen. Please don't ask. But Jasper, what scene do you think it was besides that scene that affected you the most from the original Hills Have Eyes?
Well, I think, more than just one scene. It was that, Craven did this, the whole build up to the family, I'm sure people, I act like I'm spoiling it, but the Michael Berryman and the family, like stalking them, and then just the dichotomy of this like all-American family. I thought Wes did an amazing job of, like, you're almost watching a sitcom with the family, or like a 70s TV show, and there's this danger that's lurking, and we see it coming, but they don't. You know what I mean? I thought the way he put all that together was fascinating.
You have that juxtaposition of, the really, really, like you said, the modern family at that point, and then the family, like that juxtaposition of something so beautiful and something so disgusting about to meet up. I agree with you.
And just the way he built up even the family dynamic of the cannibal, of the Michael Berryman with the mom and he was showing these two families and family values in different ways. I mean,
Mhm.
if you really break it down, there's a lot of message in there.
Well, and I still to this day can't see Michael Berryman without seeing the poster of The Hills Have Eyes. When I see him, that's the first thing that pops in my head is that theatrical poster to The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, and I know he and Suze do the Comic-Con, the horror cons together still. And I mean, he did go on to do other stuff, but if he had never done another movie, how would you ever forget him in this one,
He cemented his legacy with one movie, and all the rest was just icing on the cake. And I'm not saying like, oh, he could have never played another role. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, it's not like a Napoleon Dynamite situation where everybody looks at him and they think of the cannibal. But they knew this guy had it. He had it. He's got it. He can continue his career, but he nailed it the first time, and he was able to continue that career, which is amazing. Now there are a fair amount of kills in The Hills Have Eyes, and as horror fans, we do like the kills. Do you know which kill it was that stuck with you the most from The Hills Have Eyes, the original?
Give me a couple examples, because I haven't seen it in a while, so.
Right.
And we don't see that coming either. That's
our first, you're in it.
Yeah, that's when it kind of really goes from like the family, all of a sudden we're into a horror film now. Yeah.
Yes. So that's where I probably stick with all the time, because this is, like I said, I watched this movie at a very young age as well. And it's funny because I watched Nightmare on Elm Street first. That was my first introduction into Craven.
Okay.
And then I went down the rabbit hole of Wes Craven, and
didn't Wes have one before this? Did he have
Wes? I think this was his first big one, but he had another one before this.
Okay.
But this was the one that like kind of really started his career, letting people know like, oh, this guy, he knows his stuff. But what was the one he had before this? Now my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour.
No, that's fine. I just remember, I don't remember it, but I think in either Sue's telling me or looking it up that, he had done something, I think, before. But you're right, this one sort of put him on the map big time. For something that was, for a film that was not that expensive to make, it was kind of it's a surprise at the box office.
The Last House on the Left.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, The Last House on the Left before.
I guess from that probably helped him get this one made.
Right. But if I recall correctly, I could be wrong, because there was one time in the 90s I was wrong. It could happen again. But if I remember correctly, he did not direct the Last House on the Left. He wrote that, but he did not direct it.
I think you're right. I think that sounds right.
I could be wrong. Like I said, it has happened once before. I'm used to hearing that. I think you're right. That's something I'm used to hearing.
Yeah, I remember. I think that sounds right.
So we know about your first horror movie, being The Hills Have Eyes, what that movie meant to you and how it affected you. But now, Jasper, real quick, I want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here for a second. My little buddy Ghostface here has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Jasper? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Well, it would be When a Stranger Calls. I think that one. And does anyone remember Terror Train?
Oh, of course.
Okay. See, I went that I didn't miss any of them. Like even those that nobody really. Again, anything that could really happen, right? So I'm thinking of like being on a train and being trapped.
Jamie Lee, right?
Yeah. I think what happened was after I saw her in the first Halloween film, I don't know, Terror Train was after that for sure, but I kind of followed. I sort of anything she was doing, I watched.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I landed on Terror Train, but that just sticks out as one of the scary films. Also, like I said, the boogeyman, the monster kind of things never really. Well, look, Halloween, Friday the 13th, you know, there are moments in those that you jump out of your seat, clearly. But I think something about When a Stranger Calls to this day, I just still can think about it, and it was scary. And it's funny because I couldn't even tell you how that movie ends. Like I haven't seen it in so long that I don't even remember how it ends, but I just remember the impact it had.
What I love about that is everybody knows the main parts of When a Stranger Calls, even if they've never seen the movie. We all know, have you checked on the kids? We traced the call. It's coming from inside the house.
Oh.
You know, and one of my favorite horror films of all time, Black Christmas, you know, they even have we traced the call, Chief. It's coming from inside the house. You idiot. That's where the calls are coming from. No, the calls are going in there too, Chief. You know, so that, you know, different variations of that very, very scary thing have been used throughout history. And When a Stranger Calls, I mean, even the movie, if you remember, the theatrical poster was like, you'll never be able to make it past the first 15 minutes. You know,
Right.
the first 15 minutes of any film, you know, and like that's the confidence they had. And what I wanted to say real quick about Terror Train, for anybody that hasn't seen it, it's brilliant because the killer in the movie, they're on a train, so he doesn't have nowhere to hide. So the way he moves around is he uses different masks as he goes around. He doesn't kill in the same mask. So it's very hard for you to put your finger on who the killer is. If you haven't seen Terror Train, can't recommend it enough. That's a very fun movie. I mean,
It makes me want to go see it again now because I haven't seen it in so many years.
Right. Such a fun movie, man. So before I let you go, Jasper, I do want to say again, man, I've had an amazing time hanging out with you. Getting to know you a little bit better has been super incredible for me. And the next time I see you being a dickhead on the screen, I'm gonna be like, oh, Jasper, you knock it off. But before I let you go, what I want to do is I want to bounce back to the last house on the The Hills Have Eyes. We started talking about Wes, and now that's all everybody got. I want to bounce back to The Hills Have Eyes. And what we're going to do is rank this movie, Jasper, on a skull count. Now, we're not judging this movie on acting, production, score, direction, none of the above. What we're doing here, Jasper, is strictly ranking this movie on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. I think I know the answer, Jasper, but my script is telling me I have to ask you the question. What would your ranking of The Hills Have Eyes be?
5 plus 5 plus a Susan Lanier scream. Yeah.
And like I said, what makes it even more incredible to me is, you know, you went some of my best memories pre having my children is, you know, going to the theater with my friends. Like you said, your parents drop you off, you go in, you end up, you know, you pay to see The Land Before Time, but then you accidentally walk into Terror Train, you know, like
Right.
These are the things that I remember being a young boy. And just the fact that you guys were able to, you know, go in and see The Hills Have Eyes. And like I said, as a 12-year-old boy, this is going to be very, very scary. You know, like you're watching, you know, like I said, these monsters and what they're doing to this young lady and then the things that happen after that. So, I mean, for you guys to be able to stomach it and stick it out, good on you. So,
well, you know, growing up in the 70s, you know, parenting was, I mean, with all due respect to parents, of course, you know, there was no like parental advisory boards on the film. You know,
right.
it's more like just go to the mall, basically. Go to the mall and hang out and get out of the house. But yeah, that was.
And I'm sure, and I've always said, and again, I got to remind everybody, I am not a therapist. I am not a psychiatrist. Everything I'm saying is purely my opinion. But I feel like if children watch horror movies at a young age and they get the education to go along with what they're watching, it actually creates people that are more grounded in reality because they learn the difference between fantasy and reality. It's not something they're shielded from. So when they do see it, they don't understand what they're watching. It's just like anything else in life. If you do it responsibly and you have education, whether that's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, if you're responsible and you have the education to go along with what's going on, I feel like you have a better grip on reality at that point. And,
Right.
you know, I've let my kids watch horror movies since they were born. I mean, it's just something that I don't feel like there's something wrong with my kids watching horror movies. And if you want to come at me as a parent, go ahead. I'll talk to you about this all day. I won't be upset, but I just feel like it's, in my opinion, I would rather show this to my kids and educate them the differences between right and wrong, fantasy and reality, than letting them stumble upon it somewhere else and be confused as to what they're seeing and not know what's going on in their head. So that's just my opinion, though. And you talked about how watching The Hills Have Eyes for the first time, you became obsessed with horror after that. And I feel like, again, I don't condone drug use, guys. If you're responsible, you do what you do. But watching horror for the first time to me is like doing drugs. Like you get that high and that adrenaline, and then you're constantly chasing that dragon again, trying to get that high again. And I feel like that's why we always go back to horror. So,
And you know, I always knew it was make believe. I mean, I always knew it wasn't real. I mean, I think, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Like, did a certain generation not get that point? You know, it's like when they talk about kids in the video games and stuff. There's something missing where they think it's real. So I part of the fun was knowing it was not real and still being scared and having fun.
right.
Because
Knowing that you can have fun and you're going to be okay when you get home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
all.
I get it, man. I grew up, like I said, like, and this is no bullshit. You had Downtown Video, which was my parents' video store. Next door to that was Tim's Cards and Comics, where, you know, I went and I thumbed through baseball cards, I thumbed through comic books. And about 2 blocks down, we had Aladdin's Palace, the video arcade. And I was in there, you know, I remember vividly walking in there the first time when they got the brand new cartridge in, the brand new case, I'm sorry, and it was Mortal Kombat. And I walk up and I see these older kids punching and the blood squirting everywhere. And I was just like, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And then they came out with the ratings board, like you were talking about, and video games had to be rated TV 14 or, you know, rated by the MPA, you know, and it's just like, it's a video game, guys. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, there's something else going on besides, you know what I mean? It's
if you want
not.
to get to the root of the problem, universal healthcare, but that's a whole conversation for a whole.
But I wanted to
other-
tell you, you mentioned video stores. So do you know about Tarantino is doing a podcast now with Roger Avery, and they used to work together at, I don't know if it was Blockbuster. I don't think they worked together when they were in their 20s at a video store. So they now have a podcast. I don't know if it's probably Spotify, but everyone out there, if you really want to listen to Tarantino and Roger Avery, who's been his co-producer on all his films, go back. They go back and they talk about films that they watched back during the video store days. And I've only listened to 2 episodes, but it's like they did one on Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and you know, because Quentin has always sort of been this video nerd, you know, this video store nerd, but it's a really great idea if you haven't checked it out.
Oh, I will. If I can listen to people talk about their experiences with film, whether it's horror or not, to be able to hear people talk about how film started for them, how horror started for them. You know, one of my favorite movies of all time is Back to the Future. You know, that's the farthest thing from a horror movie. I think there's only been one perfect movie ever made, and that to me is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I think that movie is perfect. You know, I just think it's the perfect movie, and it's not a horror movie. Tim Burton obviously directed it, so it's got little nods to horror. You got the Large Marge scene, or the clown doctors getting the bike and doing surgery on it. But you know, like, I just love film, you know, and you know, even like listening to Tom Savini, something you were talking about, you know, I know it's fake, you know, and that's what, you know, these producers, directors, they treat themselves like they're magicians, you know, like, we're going to go in here and we're going to do magic tricks and show you all these amazing things on film, and you know, we're going to misdirect you, like, while you're looking over here, I've got the flowers coming up over here, you know, like they're doing all these misdirections and stuff, just like a magician does. And I just love watching behind the scenes stuff, watching movies get made, watching commentary. Like I'm a big nerd when it comes to film, man. And
well, let me say to you, you know,
podcast.
I want to thank you, because I think a lot of times actors, we don't give people like yourself who really love film and really appreciate what we do. I don't think you guys get enough credit for loving film and being, you know, there's so many actors who don't have the knowledge you have about films and TV and stuff. So I'm always blown away by the dedication, when I've done the cons and stuff and people come up to me and they know more about some stuff I've done. I mean, I have to stop and go, well, wait a minute, I don't remember that, you know what I mean? But I'm just so grateful for the fans to even have a fan, but more so film like historians like yourself who really it means a lot to actors, and so thank you for that.
Oh no, dude, anytime. Like I said, the fact that you guys are out there doing your thing, and it's being an actor is one of the worst jobs in the world. I mean, yes, you guys have an amazing life and you get to have fun, but you're not allowed to have opinions on fucking anything. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants to hear that shit. Oh, you stick to acting, blah 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 blah. Man, during COVID, you guys were still pumping out movies, and you were still, you were going through checks, you were masked up, you were getting your vaccines. Even before vaccines, though, you were taking every precaution, getting tested every day. And you did that just so we could stay entertained while we were getting quarantined. And we, luckily we have 13 different streaming services to choose from on a bad
Right.
day, but
Yeah.
those don't exist without the hard work that you guys do. And so the fact that people ever say anything bad about actors to me drives me fucking bananas, because I have a lot of friends that do what you do, and I get to talk to a lot of people that do what you do, and I know the hard work and dedication that you guys put into your craft. And I appreciate it. Like I said, you said you appreciate us. We appreciate you, man. And because the fact, like I said, during quarantine, everybody should have realized how much Hollywood and indie films mean to us, because you guys kept us sane throughout quarantine.
Well, like you, I'm a fan. I grew up, I was just a TV fanatic, a pop culture. I often say I didn't graduate from college, but I got a whole lot of shallow, useless showbiz knowledge in my head.
Yes, man. That's so great.
Yeah.
Man, I do want to say, guys, we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and that curtain's about to drop. But before it does, there are some social media links down here that need your attention. So make sure you're giving Jasper a follow on social media to stay up to date on everything he has coming up, and just follow along with the ride that he's on now. So Jasper, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I have a couple more questions for you. Not everybody else. As always, thank you for sticking with us through all these episodes. We love you so much. As always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.